Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. According to the 2023 Modern Wealth Survey by Charles Schwab, the typical person says it would take a little over $2.2 million in investments to feel wealthy. So if that's what it takes to feel wealthy, what does it take to get there? Well, that's going to depend entirely on where you're currently at with your investments and how long of a runway you're giving yourself to get there. For most people, if you start young enough, I think it's entirely possible to hit the $2 million threshold. On the one hand, we have really great news in that 89% of Americans are saving on a regular basis. But on the other hand, for many, this savings isn't making it into an investment account or a retirement account. Rather, it's being directed into a cash account, as 60% of Americans say they aren't currently saving towards retirement. So if you have lofty investment goals, the first and most obvious step is that you have to be contributing to your investment accounts. Having cash reserves is wonderful. Having a fully funded emergency fund, that's an absolute must. But beyond that, you have to be funneling some funds towards your investment accounts because that's the only way you build wealth, to put your money to work making money. Back in the day, I used to watch Shark Tank, and I always loved how Kevin O'Leary referred to his dollars as little soldiers that he would send out to bring more dollars back. Before we get into how much you need to save, it's probably safe to say that most people who are watching finance-related videos aren't starting with an account balance of zero. According to the most recent data from Fidelity, here's the typical account balances broken down by generation. Going strictly off the median data, for Gen Z, typical account balance is $2,500. For Millennials, $15,500. For Gen X, $44,000. And for Baby Boomers, it's $61,200. As expected, the account balances tend to increase with age as investors have had more time to contribute to these accounts. So for those in the youngest generation, Gen Z, currently up to the age of 26, looking to strive towards that $2 million goal, how much would they have to save each month in order to hit that goal by the age of 65? Well, let's start with a 20-year-old Gen Z member, and we'll assume that they have the median account balance, that $2,500. As it turns out, this investor would need to put away roughly $400 a month for the next 45 years in order to hit that goal. But for a 25-year-old with the same starting balance, they would need to save $605 a month. One of the most prominent accounts we tend to talk about when it comes to retirement investing is the Roth IRA. It's a self-directed retirement account where you contribute post-tax dollars, and then that money gets to grow completely tax-free, and you can take that money out at a later date completely tax-free. These are absolutely wonderful accounts, but they do come with a couple stipulations in terms of income limits and contribution limits. Assuming you qualify income-wise and that you're under the age of 50, current annual contribution limit is $6,500. So that means if you're just starting out in your investment career and you're, say, 20 years old, max out your Roth every single year and you'll be on track to hit this goal of $2 million. But if you're a little bit older, say 25, you're gonna have to do more than max out your Roth, because simply maxing out the Roth would result in an annual investment shortfall of about $760. So for these young investors around the age of 25 or so, you're also going to have to be investing elsewhere if your goal is to hit that $2 million mark. This could be through an employer-sponsored plan, think a 401k, a TSP, a 403b, a 457, or even simply through a traditional brokerage account. And just to peek into how this generation of investors are actually investing their money, well, according to Fidelity, a full 84% of them have their investments completely in target date funds. Next up, we have Millennials, those aged 27 to 41. For these investors, the median account balance is $15,500, so that's what we're going to use as our starting point, and we're going to again assume they want to hit this $2 million mark by the time they hit 65. In order to hit that $2 million goal, a 30-year-old would need to invest $830 a month. A 35-year-old would need to invest $1,310 a month, and a 40-year-old would need to invest over $2,000 a month. As you can see, these numbers start to go up quite quickly. And how realistic it is for you to save these amounts really depends on your income and your expenses. It's often reported that millennials are behind on their savings. And part of the reason these numbers seem so high is that we're starting with a relatively low account balance relative to the number of remaining working years. But if you're in a position where your investments are at a higher level, you would need to save less to hit this target. The truth of the matter is, many people in this age range find themselves in this position where their investment accounts are lower than they would like them to be. And at that point, you really have to do the hard work. You have to find ways to cut costs and boost your income. Small things can make a big difference. For instance, increase your savings rate 1% per year and do that every year from the time you're 30 to the time you're 40, and it can help you retire 5 years sooner. 1% makes a difference, and it's likely you won't notice a 1% difference in your paycheck, but your investments over time certainly will. Then we have the Gen X members, aged 43 to 58. For this group, the median retirement account balance is $44,000, so that's going to be the number we use as our starting balance, and again, we're aiming for that retirement date of 65 years old. In order to hit that $2 million goal, a 45-year-old would need to save over $3,000 a month. A 50-year-old would need to save $5,500 a month. And a 55-year-old would need to save $10,580 per month. Let's talk about those numbers, because those numbers are very unrealistic. You know that, and I know that. We all know that. But if you're starting from a median or a very typical account balance for someone in this age group, aiming to hit a $2 million in investment value, it's safe to say we can call that a very generous stretch goal. Remember, the only reason I'm using $2 million is that's the number people say they need in order to feel wealthy. It's certainly not to say that everyone needs $2 million. Yes, $2 million may make you feel wealthy, but many in this age group say they need far less. They say they need something closer to $1 million in order to retire or to reach financial freedom. But still, only 1 in 5 of 45-year-olds are actually on track to hit this threshold. In order to hit the $1 million goal by 65, starting with the typical account balance of $44,000, a 45-year-old would need to save $1,400 a month. A 50-year-old would need to save $2,500 a month, and a 55-year-old would need to save around $5,000 a month. These are still some pretty lofty numbers. I do think it's realistic to say that a 45-year-old can still hit this goal, but once you get to the point where you're shortening that investing horizon to say 10 or 15 years, it becomes pretty difficult to hit this. Quite simply, at this point, you're doing a lot of the legwork yourself, rather than compound interest doing the legwork. And that makes all the difference. Compound interest is a magical force, but it needs a long time horizon. And again, none of this is to say that you need $2 million to reach financial freedom, or that you even need $1 million to reach financial freedom. The fact of the matter is, the vast majority of people retire or step away from the workforce and have far less than $1 million invested. What you need to figure out is how much you need to live your lifestyle, and that's all that matters. And when you're running this calculation, you want to make sure that you include any additional income streams you receive, as well as Social Security, because these go a long way into reducing the amount of investments you would need to support your lifestyle. If each of these generations simply wanted to hit $1 million at retirement, here's what those monthly investment numbers would look like. As you can see, these numbers are far more realistic for the vast majority of age groups. In fact, if you start early enough, hitting the 7-figure benchmark in a 40 or 45-year time horizon is incredibly easy because you only have to invest very small amounts. It's worth keeping in mind that the typical person is incredibly behind when it comes to the recommended savings and investment levels. According to Fidelity, by 30 years old, you should have 1 times your annual income saved up and invested. By 40, it should be 3 times your annual income. By 50, it should be 6 times your annual income. And by 60, it should be 8 times your annual income. And if you're on track or following this trajectory, aiming to hit that stretch goal of $2 million in investments might not be all that hard. Let's use the typical household income of $75,000 a year and say our investors hit each of the recommended benchmarks from Fidelity. These numbers are far more realistic for the vast majority of age groups. Once you get towards the very upper age brackets, again, it becomes more of that stretch goal or questioning how realistic some of these ending numbers are. It hinges on you getting invested early and investing regularly throughout the course of your lifetime and hitting these benchmarks along the way. The earlier you start, the easier it's going to be to end with a higher lump sum. The later you start, the more difficult it's going to be. The more work you have to do on your end rather than leaving your portfolio up to the efforts of compound interest. And of course, it's highly unlikely that you're going to end up saving the exact same amount every single month throughout the course of your entire life. Sometimes you're going to be able to save more, sometimes you're going to be able to save less. But as you advance up in your career, it's likely that you'll be able to increase your investments over time. Do you have a target financial freedom number that you're aiming for? Leave your answer in a comment down below. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye.